Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply echo back their joyous strains. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? Say what may the tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song. In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Come to Bethlehem and see Him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Deo. See amid the winter snow, born for us on earth below. See the tender Lamb appear, promised from eternal years. Oh, within a manger lies He who built the starry skies, He whose throne in heaven above sits amid the cherubim. Hail, thou ever-blessed one! Hail, redemption's happy dawn! Sing through all Jerusalem, Christ is born in Bethlehem. As we watched at dead of night, lo, we saw a wondrous light, angels singing peace on earth, told us of the Savior's birth. Hail, thou ever-blessed morn! Hail, redemption's happy dawn! Sing through oh teach us, holy child, by thy face, oh so meek and mild. Teach, oh teach us to resemble thee in thy sweet humility. Hail thou ever blessed one, hail redemption's happy dawn. Sing through all Jerusalem, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Amen. You may be seated.
The year was 1957, and the town was Danville, Virginia. Mrs. Frances Spencer was asked by her church to decorate the very large Christmas tree in her sanctuary. She was raised in the house of missionaries. Her parents were missionaries, and she had a knack for decorating and for fashion. So she had a resume. She was ready to take on this important task of decorating the tree. She began by asking herself, she was a mother herself, and she said, how would Mary want us to celebrate the birthday of Jesus? She told herself, well, in modern times, the way we celebrate birthdays is we have a cake with candles on it. And we place the name of the individual whose birthday it is on the cake. And as she looked at this bare tree in the sanctuary, she goes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to place the name of Jesus and this title of Christ all over the Christmas tree. But instead of using the English language, something we could read easily, she decided to use the Greek letters, the Greek monogram. And she came up with, this was one of the first ones she came up as a decoration, the chi and the rho together. It was one of the first chrismons that Mrs. Spencer came up with. Over time, she developed more and more chrismons. This was one that she developed years later that became more sophisticated. And with each of them, they have deeper meanings. This one here is the Epiphany star. It reminds us of the wise men who looked at the star as they approached Jerusalem. The 5 points to the star point to the 5 wounds of Christ on the cross. Well, as more and more time went on, this tradition began to grow from 1957 into many other denominations. Later, Mrs. Spencer just said, I just wanted to decorate the Christmas tree so that the church and everyone who came into it, that everything pointed to Christ. Well, that's what Christmas is all about, and that's what this love gift is all about as well. As we as the church want everything that we do to point towards Christ. Tonight, you're going to hear of stories of mercy, but they're more than just stories of mercy and money that we receive. All the things that we do, all the mercy that we offer, it's our hope and our desire that they too point to Christ. We're a very large church, and most of the mercy needs that come through this church you'll never know about. But I can assure you that our deacons work tirelessly. I would beg to say there's probably not a week that goes by that we don't receive one type of mercy request in our church where there's a real need from a member or someone from in our community who's in need. Tonight, you're going to hear just a couple of stories. They really are just the tip of the iceberg of a much larger ministry that we have here in our church. And it really would be impossible for each one of you to get intimately involved with every single case that comes our way. But you know what you can do? You can be a part of the mercy ministry of this church tonight. You can give to this particular fund, which is just a workhorse in the life of our church, administering mercy to people who are in need. This past week, I was told the story of one of our members who actually looked at the chrismons on these trees and began to notice that it was told that they were beginning to be out of date. The ones that were on here last year were nearly 24 years old. The brilliant white color that once marked them had faded to a dull brown. A lot of the gold trim that was around the chrismons were beginning to fall off. And she took it upon herself this past year to construct 73 of these chrismon ornaments. If you were to talk to this lady, she would tell you very quickly, she would say, I can't do everything. I can't meet all the needs that this church has, but I can do something. I can participate in allowing this church to sparkle with the love of Christ. She can't do everything, but she was determined to do something. Tonight, as you hear these stories, no, you probably will not become intimately involved with every single one of them. And believe me, there's more stories than we have time to tell, but you can be a part of them tonight. As we receive our offering tonight, you'll hear more about what this fund does, but please give generously to it tonight and throughout the year. As a reminder, every time we receive the Lord's Supper, you can continue to give this important ministry fund in the life of our church. I'm going to ask the chairman now, Byron Morris, to come forward, I believe, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what the deacons' mercy ministry does throughout the year.
Thank you, John. Good evening. I'm Byron Morris, this year's chairman of the diaconate, and I just want to welcome you again to our special love gift dinner and service. At the beginning of this year, I was challenged as I took on the role of chairman by two passages of Scripture that I'd like to quickly share with you, and really that's just by way of introduction of a couple of segments we've prepared to share some of the stories and also give an account of the work that we've been doing this year. The first passage from Galatians 6, 9, and 10, it says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then as we have the opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." That really sums up what the ministry of mercy is, why we do it, and kind of how it comes about. In a little bit, we're going to hear from one of our elders, Billy English, sharing really some of the gospel impact of that mercy ministry in the region around the country, in this case specifically, the work that was done in South Carolina. And then later we're going to see a video where Dave Kastner, our vice chairman this year, gives a glimpse of what that looks like as we minister to one of our members right here near home. But before that, we're going to hear from Jason Medlin, our mercy chair this year. And the other passage that really inspired me was the parable of the talents. And just realizing that God has given us generously. He gives us many resources. And the challenge of mercy ministry is to faithfully and generously utilize the resources God has given us. And Jason's done a wonderful job this year of leading us, encouraging us, and coordinating the efforts of the diaconate in that mercy ministry. So Jason, if you'd come up, and he'll give us a picture of how those resources were utilized this year.
All right, so before we look at the word cloud here, I am going to read a passage of Scripture. I'm just going to remind us of the contents that are in the story of the Good Samaritan from Luke 10, okay? So, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You've answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And so Jesus masterfully tells a story. In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite. When he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side as well. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. So a couple things are happening in this story. First, we have a man that is in trouble on a dangerous road, on the Jericho road. Second, we have a Levite and a priest, both who are called to respond to a man that is in need like this, and both choose to walk on the other side of the road and pass this man. Both of these men put their schedules ahead of their purpose. And then we have a Samaritan, and the Samaritan dives deep into applying mercy to this man who's found naked, lying on the side of the road. So I want to give some categories of mercy that he provides that'll help us understand the word clouds to follow, okay? So the Samaritan provided full-bodied mercy, leading him to meet a variety of needs. His compassion provided friendship, advocacy, emergency and medical treatment, transportation, a hefty financial subsidy, and even a return visit. So you see a lot of mercy being applied to one individual there in a very serious situation. And so the Mercy Fund and the deacons, we seek to provide this, we seek to mirror this type of mercy with the various requests and things like that that come through this church. So the word clouds, let me tell you what you're looking at up here. So we're going to have 3 of these. If you're not familiar with the word cloud, you input a whole lot of text. And whatever text appears most often becomes the largest text that you see. So this word cloud is from the Mercy Report, and it's under the column of types of mercy. So you've had a moment here to look at it. There's a few that I'd like to highlight. The first one here is you see the car ministry represented. So vehicles, whether it's repairing a member's vehicle, donating a vehicle to someone who's in need, transportation creates opportunities that otherwise may not have existed. Think about the donkey, taking the man on the road to a place where he can be tended to and taken care of. The next one I'd like to point out is general mercy, so rent, mercy, assistance, groceries, providing for basic needs for people during their time of need. And then we would not be an Augusta church if we did not reach out and support the Master's Table, which is just back here. They serve 3 meals a day, 365 days a year. So they're doing something that we are just unable to do with a lot of the walk-in requests that we get. So we partner with them financially on a quarterly basis and feel really good about sending people in that direction when they're in need of a meal, especially when we encounter folks here at the church downtown. Okay? The next column that I pulled text from was the payee column. Okay, so the first one I'd like to highlight again is the Augusta Rescue Mission. This is another one of our ministry partners that we support on a quarterly basis. The Augusta Rescue Mission provides both short and long-term housing solutions for men who are looking to establish their relationship with Christ and rebuild their lives. We also partner with them on Tuesday nights, and we sing with the men. We actually visit the facility, visit the men, and it's mutually encouraging for us as well. All right, I chose to highlight Georgia Power and Jefferson Electric. We do receive a lot of requests for power bill payments, and usually it's in the 9th hour. But the reason I highlighted this is not because we receive a lot of requests for help with power bills, but because power bills become open doors into people's lives. To have a relationship with someone, a request comes in and it's handled very strategically and with great care. And so the hope is both to take care of the spiritual and the physical need. And so we're actually kind of thankful that people are in a place of need financially and are coming to the church for that help. So this is the last column. This is the one that I think I tried 9 word clouds and could not find one that would fit all of the amounts, all of the expenditure amounts, that the checks that have been cut this year. I put this up here because I thought of a lot of different ways. I could show you what we spend quarterly in Mercy. I could show you what we spend annually in Mercy. But I feel like in a very robust way, there's about 70 other amounts that just would not fit on this slide. I wanted to show you the extent of the Mercy touch points that our deacons have, both with members within the church and then both also with folks that are in need in the community as well. So thank you very much.
As Jason just showed, Mercy locally, the ministry that I want to highlight is what the church does from afar. I don't know if y'all noticed, I was tuned in on it, but in the sermon this morning, George used a word repeatedly, and it was the word mercy. And it was in the context of the Lord, the Lamb of God, slain before the foundation of the world. And in the context of that, mercy is an act in which God showed us. After his death, after his resurrection, and after his ascension, he now calls his people, whom he has redeemed, to show acts of mercy. Restoring people, rebuilding places is a phrase that we often use here, and it is at the heart of our disaster response ministry. Showing mercy, showing compassion, showing acts of kindness to people who find themselves in the chaos of a natural disaster. And we do that in the context of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, when you think about it, catastrophic events creates and causes such emotional trauma that I've never experienced. And how do you characterize this? Well, hopelessness is usually we see in most people that we come in contact with. I'm going to tell you 3 stories. These are all divine appointments. There's no other way to explain it. The widow that you see here, she's smiling, but she was not smiling when we first met her. This woman lives in Sumter, South Carolina. She lost almost everything she owned. I would say nearly 90%. And I want to just mention that she's a widow. And when her house was flooded, it stayed flooded for several weeks. The flood waters receded, and it stayed in that condition. The mold and the mildew there was such a smell. If you've ever done this, it's only one smell. And but anyway, when we met her, very sad. I can still remember the words that she said, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" But as we continue to reassure her that we were here to help her, and that God would provide for her, she just needed to trust him. So at the end of just 2 days of working alongside of her and just coming along, just words of encouragement, guess what returned? Hope and laughter. And that was pretty cool to see. At the end of each workday, when we would leave a home, we would ask the family to sit with us. And what we usually do is lay our hands on them and pray with them and share with them the love and the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And I'll never forget when we were leaving, she come up to us and said that she was a hugger. And she hugged all the team members and thanked us more than you know for coming and helping her. I like to also say not only does catastrophic events like a natural disaster affects people with emotional trauma, but it does something else. Catastrophic events open things for people to think about God, open to things of God. You know, the people that we're seeing, they're not blaming God. They just want Him to help them. And that's always something to see, and it's always a slow process, walking with people, just showing them as their home is being restored. It's amazing to see. As their home is being restored, hope returns. They can see that not all is lost, and they can move in once again to their home. The other thing is that we work through a local church. We normally work through a local church, and it is that local church there in Sumter and also Andrews, South Carolina, that we work through. Now, such was the case with Jeff. Now, Jeff was unemployed for almost a year. He finally found, he lived in Florida, but he did find a job as a photographer at the local newspaper. He was on a fixed income, and he had very little savings. The floodwaters came up underneath his house. It never penetrated into his house, but it came up under his house, and his heating system and cooling system was completely ruined. The same story, and the mold and the mildew was such that either he had to leave his house or he had to repair it. A contractor gave him a quote of $10,000 just to remove the contaminated duct system in his units. And the church asked us, I have a dirty job for you. And I told him we'd take it without really knowing what it was about. And so we went under that house. At least I went partially. The two men doesn't want me to tell you who they are, but I sure appreciate them. What a witness they were to me. But that was one dirty job, and I want you to know we did that job. We did it in 4 hours for free. Now, that was a catch. At the end of the job, we told Jeff, Jeff, now you need to know why we're crawling under your house and removing this mess for free. And we told him that we were Christians, and we told him this is what Jesus would have us do. And I shared with him John 3:16. I said, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. And I said, Jeff, if you would believe on Him, you would not perish, but you would have everlasting life. And he stopped me and he said, 2 days ago, I was very depressed. And I didn't know what to do. I really don't have the money to pay the kind of expenses that was before me. And he says, when I went to the bank just to see what I can do, there on the clock was 3:16. It's been that verse that has sustained me for these several days now. And now you have come now and shared that verse with me, how good God is. And we were blessed by that. And but God gave him the strength, and he don't have to spend that $10,000 there to repair his home. And how he wanted us to say, thank you, church, for sending us as a team there. But the last family that we ministered to, it's the most unusual family that we had to minister to. This man's home was flooded from top to bottom. And I want you to see these pictures. This man was an executive out of a large corporation in Charleston. And it was a hunting lodge. He lived in Charleston. And this was his hunting lodge that he would bring his clients. Now let's just go through these slides here. This is a progression. The next one, floodwaters on his porch. And that's where it ended. How can you save a house like this? Well, we did. And what's fortunately is that the floodwaters in this situation receded quickly. And you'll see more pictures on this one. But let me just share this with you, and that is I struggled a little bit about going to this home. This was a man who had means by which to repair his house. And as I struggled, I said, Lord, is this the home you want us to go to? Are there other people that doesn't have the means to repair their homes? And the Lord reminded me of this verse. The Lord said, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So off to the hunting lodge we went. All the people we served, this family struggled the most with what they had. And as we got more involved in his home, I can see why. In this hunting lodge, almost his entire furniture was from the Civil War era. Great-great-great-grandfather passed all of this furniture down, and they were still using it. And the flood came and ruined almost his entire home, as you see it here. But it wasn't until that afternoon did we really see why the Lord asked us to come to this house. Now I want to tell you, this happened to Preston in the last 30 days that we met him. He was diagnosed with cancer, lost a family member, his daughter developed seizures, his home was flooded, he lost his job in a merger. This man needed Jesus. The next day, after a number of us had the opportunity to share Christ with him, and the next day, guess what returned? Hope returned, and laughter returned. And we sat down, as we left, we sat down with him, and we shared again the love of God and the forgiveness that he provides. And he said to us, I would like to send a check to First Presbyterian Church for sending you guys to us. And we all agreed that if he would send the check to the local church that was sending these teams out to help their community. So he said, please tell your church, thank you so much for ministering to us and showing such acts of kindness to us. And so now we're asking you to be a part of this mercy ministry that God is raising up here in our church locally and just from afar. Now the last question is, who can be involved in this ministry? Well, did you know we've had several trips. We've had teenagers to go, and I'm almost tempted to tell you this man's age, but he was in his 70s. So anybody can go, men and women, to be a part of this. And so volunteers are needed. You need to know it can be messy, it can be dirty. But we'll provide the equipment you need in that. So how can you be a part of this? Well, through praying for our trips, you can see the gospel is going through this in these natural disasters. Giving to the relief trip, as we've mentioned, and maybe you'll even consider going. And those are the kind of things that we want to just highlight. And as we look to our God as one who has shown us great mercy, and he calls us to show mercy to others.
A couple months ago, one of our parish deacons brought to us a need of a family in the community that needed some help with major housing repairs. And ordinarily, this would be something we would look at and say, this is beyond our skill set, this is out of our reach. However, with the disaster response team, we found an organization within the church we could partner with. We were able to support them financially and also to come alongside them with some people as well. Serving in this way allows us to do more than merely writing a check. It allows us to share God's love in a hands-on way. It's a great outlet for many men with gifts in carpentry and electrical work and plumbing to use those gifts in practical ways. And it's a great way to steward the resources of the church and to make the most of what the congregation entrusts to us. And lastly, it's a lot of fun. Well, traditionally, our role as deacons has been to meet needs, mercy needs within the church. We're certainly privileged to be a part of that, but as our awareness of the needs grows, we're seeing more and more the need to cooperate and to partner with other ministries and with our church members at large. So our request is make us aware of more and more of these needs and help us expand our vision as we look forward to restoring people and rebuilding places with the gospel.
In a moment, we're going to collect the love gift offering, and then just one little note about that. If you're writing a check, please be sure in the memo line to designate that to either love gift, mercy fund, diaconate, deacons, any one of those, so that the church can direct that appropriately. I did want to take a few minutes to talk about what I call avenues of mercy, and I hope you'll see what I mean by that. The first is, who is mercy for? Going back to Galatians 6, mercy is for everyone. We accept all different kinds of requests, and as you see, get involved in all different kinds of things as a part of that ministry. But first and foremost, mercy is for you. It's the gifts that are given to the church to be distributed as a part of the Mercy Fund is first and foremost for the benefit of the congregation, for members and regular attendants of this church. So if anyone in this church has a need, please come forward, whether to a deacon or someone in your parish or Sunday school, and let us know what your need is and see how we might be able to help. But it is for everyone, and we encourage you to help others in your community. That's a big part of our ministry, is facilitating our members in reaching out and showing mercy to people in their community. Secondly, how to participate in mercy. As we've seen, there's a number of ways to participate. Tonight we're hopefully all participating by giving generously to the Mercy Fund to facilitate the meeting of needs. But we also have the disaster relief team that you can be involved with. I've also been a part this year of two great, I think, mercy situations that worked very well. One was just within a sort of sub-community. So whether within your parish or Sunday school, to come together and help someone, whether in your community or someone outside the community. And that's a great way to show mercy and be a part of mercy in this church. It's just gather together as members of the church to help someone. Secondly, partnering with the diaconate. Those kind of partnerships, and a little bit what you saw in the video, work really well, where the diaconate can come with resources or know-how that we might have, but really to facilitate you in reaching out and loving someone else. So when the diaconate can partner with the congregation of the church or members of the church, that's a great way to show mercy, and it works really well and a good way to participate in mercy. And finally, how to find mercy. First and foremost, reach out to a deacon. And at this point, I'm going to have all of the deacons just stand, whether you're active or inactive. If I could just have all the deacons stand up so the congregation can take a look at who is a deacon, who's someone I could reach out to if I need mercy. So just take a look at these faces. You may have known that some of these guys were deacons. You may not have known. Some of these men are inactive, but they're still available to point you in the right direction. Thanks, guys. You can sit down now. So whether we have deacons in each parish, typically we have deacons in all the Sunday school classes. Get to know who your deacons are. and reach out to them if you have a need. Also, your parish elders and under shepherds are a great avenue to find mercy. And to the deacons, elders, and under shepherds, I would say, get to know your flock, know what their situations are, know what their needs are. The video you saw was a situation where one of our elders just recognizing a particular need, and that was by spending time with the member, going over to the house, checking on them, made us aware of this mercy need that we were then able to address. But I know there's a lot of needs in the church that go unaddressed because we don't know about them. So get to know your flock, and if you have a need, don't be afraid to come forward. You've seen that mercy is a messy business, and yet it's close to the heart of God. I was impressed this past month, George spoke a few weeks ago, as he sometimes does, about the grooves of faith that run through our mind, and when we need it, keep us on track. And I think one of those grooves has to be from Exodus, when God was up on the mountain with Moses, and Moses wanted to see God's glory, but of course he couldn't, and God promised to pass his goodness before him. And the verse that Billy shared came from that. I will give mercy to whom I want to give mercy, and compassion on whom I want to have compassion. And then later on, it talks about the Lord full of compassion and grace. And that's the verse that Jonah recalled later on. And you see that verse throughout the Bible. And that's one of our grooves of faith, that God is merciful and compassionate. He's gracious and loving. That's the heart of God. And it's our desire as the diaconate to not just have that heart and share it with others, but to encourage that heart in the congregation. Having said that, I'm going to ask John Price to come up. John Price will be the chairman of the diaconate next year, and he's going to pray for our offering and give thanks for these gifts that we're about to offer. So, John.
Thank you. Several years ago, I was called upon by a mentor to pray at a public event. And he said, "And John, no speeches, just pray." So I'll try to abide by that. I have to confess, though, that I don't really have any idea how to pray. Thought about this all day. I don't have any more clarity now than I did then. So let Scripture speak, and then I'll see what happens. And after Jesus had finished washing the disciples' feet and resumed his place, he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, so also you should wash one another's feet." Lord, I thank you, Jesus, that you stooped down low to put your hands on our ugliness, on our wounds, on our sin, to wash us clean. I pray that we, your church, your bride, would know what you have done to us, that it would transform us, that it would transform what we do with our time, with our talents, that it would transform what we do with our money. Because it's yours. It's all yours. I pray that we would live in Augusta and in this world in a way that shows others who you are and what you've done for us. Lord, I pray that you would continue to raise up men among us and women who will go low, that college kids would go low, that pretty girls would go low, that football playing guys would go low, that we would be like Jesus. We know that if we claim to live in you, Christ, we've got to walk the way you did. I pray that we would do that. And I thank you for these great leaders that you've given to us who have walked that way and set that great example for us. pray that we would see that we have no deeper ministry than to worship you, and that we would worship you with all we have and all that we are. In Christ Jesus' name's sake, amen.
From the dust and breathed into life, he stood unashamed with the fire in his eyes, the image of God walking upon the world. All of the earth was under his feet, except for the fruit on the forbidden tree. He took a taste, that's how he breaks the world. He cried, mercy, mercy. He broke the whole world with the fruit from a tree. Have mercy. Heaven and earth came down from on high, with hope in his name and a fire in his eyes, the fullness of God walking upon the world. He said he was loved and proved it with blood. He rose from the dead to prove he was God. That's what it takes for one man to save the world. Oh, such mercy, mercy. He saved the whole world when he hung on a tree. Such mercy. Son of our skin and bones, heaven above is making its home, the kingdom of God living upon the world. To love like he loves and give like he gives, to tell the story that makes dead men live. That's what it takes. We're gonna change the world. Mercy, mercy. Your love is a song and you sing over me. Such mercy.
Please stand for the Lord's benediction. And may the Lord cause you to know of his goodness and mercy that follows you all the days of your life. And as you know of it, would you become those who loves like he loves and who gives as he gives. In the name of Christ, amen.